Okay. Okay, great. All right. Welcome back, Michael Gaio. It's
Thanks, Jamin.
been a couple weeks. I know it's been a crazy last couple weeks for
Yeah.
everyone. Super glad to have you back. And we're all super excited to hear about what you have in store for us today. So take it away, present, and then we can have a discussion after. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Jamin. Yeah, hey everyone. I just want to acknowledge I've been absent the last couple weeks. Just feeling like my attention was needed in other areas that I wanted to just be here in a more in a more coherent way. So I didn't have as much time to do as much research as I wanted to do, especially for this talk or this discussion, really. Which again, just to kind of draw some large context about what I'm introducing today. Just want to reference again of kind of what my frame of focus is and why I think it can be useful to the larger conversation here. And that is that really a lot of what I'm inspired by is looking at what I call meaning frameworks. I have this my brand name is called Mythic Systems, and I focus on things like story counseling and all kinds of different programs. And we have this idea of reinventing or reinvigorating a new story for humanity. But I just want to clarify too that it's the way I look at it, terms like story or myth, I'm borrowing those in a way that because we identify those as something in themselves, but really a story and a myth, those are vehicles for meaning. And in my view, hey Nolan, in my view, it's really the meaning we're going after. Like that we're in such a potent time of global transformation. It's everything's up in the air. We don't necessarily want to reuse anything at this point. Even not only can our old stories hold us back, but even we can certainly use a new story framework. But also, it's like, well, what if we just look at that all together? What if we just dissolve the whole thing and just look at what does meaning even mean? And that to me is that the crux of what's really going on. I think we're primarily in a crisis of meaning on the planet. We've been so for a while, and so really a lot of what I'm focusing on is looking at you're just looking at and considering what is meaning and how can we possibly move into it in a new way, and looking at various frameworks of meaning and or various methods of orientating to meaning. And so with that said, what I'm talking about today is a little bit out on the edge, I think. I would have normally not gone here. Basically we're going to be talking about this term called Ahriman, which was introduced to me just a few months ago. And I probably wouldn't have come into this today, except that there was itself some meaningful guidance towards this topic over some period of time. That began, I think, when was that, Jamin, that you and I and Melissa were in Berkeley or in the Bay Area together for the talk at the whatchamacallit place,
Oh, yeah. I think that was it December 5th? Early December?
Is that right? I think that sounds about right. I think it was in December, early December. We're at the not the Audubon, I want to say Audubon Society, out there in the marina, the Berkeley Marina, for your event.
Yeah.
And I remember we walked out of that event and we had been having this discussion about collective intelligence inside, this really rich discussion. And we all walked out together. I remember this is at nighttime out in the boat marina, out there at the very end of the boat marina. Beautiful sight out there. And Melissa brought up this term called Ahriman. And I'm like, I've never heard that before. And which, I was surprised I hadn't heard of that. And she kind of gave it some description. And we talked about it a little bit, I think at dinner after that. And then what was interesting is then the very next day, I went to visit my friend, David Ulansey, who lives in Berkeley, and he's one of my favorite people, and he's somewhat of a mentor, and he was my advisor during graduate school. So he has a PhD in philosophy and religion from like Princeton, and he's very well studied, and Carl Jung and Rudolf Steiner and all these guys. And I went to his apartment in Berkeley, and you walk into his apartment, it's kind of like you are in like an Indiana Jones movie. It's just like the walls are just covered with books, all walls, like even the ceiling is covered with books. It's like there's just books everywhere, stacks of books all over in the kitchen, just it's like books everywhere. And he's got like these little like Mesopotamian statues and like the goddess Isis here and all these like geometrical figures. It's just like a little museum in his apartment. And we hung out for the afternoon talking about really deep topics as usual. And he said he had a book he wanted to loan me, and he brought it to me. I still don't know why. He's a little bit mysterious this way. He just does things without telling you sometimes. He just said, here, you really need to read this book, without knowing why. It's like, sure. And this is the book right here. It's called Sun Space. There we go. By Olive Wichner, who she was a student, I believe, of Rudolf Steiner. And this book is actually a lot about Rudolf Steiner's work. And this book is a very rare book. You can find it on Amazon and buy it for about $200. So it's a very rare book. And he loaned it to me on the condition that I promised to return it, which I will. So, but when he gave it to me in his apartment, I just flipped it open to a page. I think it was like page 98 or something like this. And I started reading. First page I'm reading. And it mentions Ahriman. The very next day, after I had just heard about this from Melissa, right? Like, whoa. And I told David that. David's way into synchronicity too. So we talked about synchronicity for a while in Ahriman. And so I said, well, I've got to look more into this. And so I took this book home, and I actually didn't begin reading this book till just about a week or two ago, knowing that we wanted to have this conversation. And the book is actually not just about that. It's about a lot of projective geometry, which is another totally fascinating topic that I'm really getting into. But so with that said, with these two synchronicities back to back, and also a third synchronicity today. So knowing I was going to talk about this today, I spent the whole morning going through this book, referencing the index and finding every mention of Ahriman in this book and going and reading them all. I went back to the original page that I had opened back in December at David Delancey's, and it talks a lot about Christ and the crucifixion, and which is synchronous today, because today is Good Friday, a few days before Easter, and this is the day that the Christians, in the Christian tradition, commemorates the crucifixion of Christ. And so that was a third synchronicity that I'd be actually reading that page again to you today on that. So this is navigating meaning in the 21st century. We just follow synchronicity and see where it leads us and have a conversation about it. So, I have no major agenda about what to present here. The topic's fairly new to me too, but I'm just going to read a few things and then give a few ideas I have around this, and then open it for discussion. Great. So, I think I'm just going to start with just read about a couple paragraphs here, and the first one. Hold on a second. Page 67. Well, I'm not able to find where I wanted to start, but that's okay. It's going to the basic idea that there's this idea of Ahriman. This gets a little spooky, okay? And this is a good segue from the last few conversations we had a couple weeks ago talking about the collective unconscious. And I think we touched upon evil and things like this, darkness and the collective shadow, things like this. So this is kind of getting a little more resolution in that domain, and especially of what we're dealing with today in the world. So this idea of Ahriman is basically, Ahriman's like this, psychic entity that, in this view, from what I'm getting from Olive Wichner, which she's getting from Rudolf Steiner, which I'm not sure exactly where he's getting. I'm not sure if the real origins of all this, but I trust that Steiner really knows what he's talking about. I trust that all what he's talking about. But basically, Ahriman's like this psychic entity that's in this pair relationship with Lucifer, okay? And that basically Lucifer is really the light bearer. Lucifer is this light, actually. Lucifer is this light entity of intelligence. And Ahriman's like the Lord of Darkness kind of thing. And Lucifer rules the light and everything etheric, and Ahriman rules everything cold and materialistic, basically. And that would include all of our technology, or most of our technology, and most of the force of the last, major epoch of life on Earth. We live in an extremely materialistic age. But again, just to get the basics of this, so we have Ahriman and Lucifer, and as it's presented here, is that actually those are two dual entities that are almost like they're inseparable, and they're like two faces of what's called the devil. That actually both of those are two faces of the devil, or Satan, I think it says in here. I can't remember which, but basically that the nefarious force, if there's a really nefarious intelligent entity in our cosmos, that Lucifer and Ahriman are actually two different faces of it. And that's part of the little trick that the devil does, is that even representing the light, that's part of this. And with too much emphasis can be a trick. And that really it's that humanity's greatest task is to, one, first become fully aware of this truth. Not just Ahriman, but Lucifer too, and the relationship and what's about the relationship. To recognize it first, and two, to then master the balance of them. That's it. Because everything's fine so long as things are in balance. It's when things get out of balance of the light and dark forces that you get problems. Either way, light or dark. There was a term I learned from David Ulansey in graduate school called enantiodromia. It comes from the Greek, enantiodromia. And basically what it means is that whenever you go all the way in one extreme of anything, any kind of quality, light and dark, cold and hot, night and day, you go all the way in one extreme, you start to get the opposite extreme. Like, for example, the sun begins to rise just after it's darkest at night, right? It's kind of like a universal principle to reality. And so, if we were to go all the way to the light, you see this a lot in the corruption of a lot of modern religions, where people become so righteous of the light path that it begins to corrupt itself. And so really it's not about totally being in the light, it's about actually finding the balance, the ongoing dynamic balance through evolution of these things. That's the way, right? So that's just like a fundamental view of what's being talked about here. And then, what Ahriman is. And then to skip forward to the page I had opened to that day in David Ulansey's space. I'm just going to read most of this 1.5 pages here. It says, today it is the thinker who must decide for himself whether or not the world contains more than the materialistic eye can see. It is no longer a question of different religions or faiths, but the guidance of their archetypal pictures is accessible also to the thinking of our time in relation to the tasks facing the modern human family and each individual today. Okay, we have mentioned the two great spiritual beings fundamental to existence on the earth. Lucifer is the being of light and heat, while Ahriman rules amid darkness and cold. When they are not in balance, they are both hostile to life. Steiner makes clear the difference between Lucifer and Beelzebub, and he describes in detail the three temptations of Christ, one by Lucifer and Ahriman together, and one by Ahriman alone. These are the three temptations of Christ. He shows that it is in the nature of the case in the present stage of evolution that Ahriman could be entirely repulsed in the third temptation. This is really interesting. Ahriman came to Christ alone and said, quote, "Turn these stones into bread in order to show thy power," unquote. That's what Ahriman said to Christ. Rudolf Steiner continues, quote, "Ahriman cannot be driven entirely from the field. Ahriman is hidden in gold, money." Let's use money here. In everything, however, that brings egoism into play in the material world. Inasmuch as some element of materialism must inevitably be part and parcel of human life, Ahriman must be reckoned with. Quote, "If Christ was truly to help man on earth, he was compelled to allow Ahriman to work. For Ahriman must work. The material element must persist until the end of Earth evolution. The activity of Ahriman had to remain unvanquished by Christ. Ahriman was not fully conquered. Christ must lend himself to the struggle with Ahriman until the end of Earth evolution, for Ahriman had to remain." Interesting, huh? Just want to recap what was just said. So it's basically just acknowledging that there are these three temptations of Christ. One was by Lucifer, the second was by Lucifer and Ahriman together, and the third is by Ahriman by himself. Christ passed those first two temptations, but the third temptations he didn't, because he knew he could not. He knew that Ahriman must actually come into some kind of domination in the long-term story of evolution on Earth, because we need to actually pass through this materialism age. That's the way I'm understanding this, right? Interesting, huh?
So you could say we have to really get immersed in it to go through it. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that saying, the only way out is through.
Yeah, and what's picked up later in the book too, I just read this in another chapter, is that that by mankind necessarily coming to master materialism and know it so well, it's materialism is the domain of space. That's how, just to back up a bit, that's how we started. He references this too. Steiner references that in previous ages, human consciousness was very, very different. And before we had science, before we had math, before we had all this stuff, it was around the time of like Descartes that math was born, that the very seeds of science was born. And then came, it was like, before that was just alchemy. Alchemy was just edging on some kind of real grasp at the real material reality of our world. And not so long ago, it's only been, several hundred years or so, that the seeds of science began, and we birthed chemistry, and we birthed physics, and we birthed all these aspects of both science and technology, because technology came out of science, where we're going deeper and deeper and deeper into this stuff, trying with the quest, thinking that if we just go deep enough into the atoms of this table, and we really understand what the most fundamental aspect of it is, then we will have found God. Then we will know everything about reality. That's been the great quest of the last 500 years, basically. We've been on the scientific quest to find God through material reality. But guess what? We got really lost along the way. Really lost. Because along the way, we discovered so much about our material reality, and all these other sciences were born, and we've developed all these technologies and applications off of all this knowledge we have and all this power that exists there, that we've become this materialistic world, including money. Money's the thing that ties it all together and makes it work. We couldn't have done it without any of these things. But yet, how tangled are we now? How deeply tangled we are. But as you're saying, Jamin, is there any other way to it? That we're fundamentally spiritual beings intentionally entangling in order to know fully all of reality, even Ahriman, right? Yeah, Jamin.
If I'm not breaking your flow.
No.
I just wanted to give a kind of a little personal account of my decades long dip into the world of Ahriman. So as a kid, I was into the social and playing and this and that and fun and whatever. But then as I got, into high school, it was programmed into me that I had to do really well in school.
Hmm.
That meant ignore a whole bunch of other aspects of life and just focus on that. And as I did that, I gravitated towards the sciences and math, and then in college engineering. And I remember having this feeling of just like power, and then I'm getting into this powerful realm that we can do so much with science and technology, and then I can make money doing it. And
Hmm.
it was I could just feel myself getting into it. I didn't know that there was anything wrong with it, right?
Right.
But it
Right.
was just like slipping down a water slide, and just feeling this virtuous cycle of more knowledge, more power, more. Anyway, I just wanted to share
Yeah.
that personal account.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, and it's tricky to talk about too. I don't think I don't think there really isn't anything necessarily wrong with it. The only thing that's wrong with it is that it's highly tempestuous. It's easy to get lost. It's by its very nature, it's easy to get lost in the material. But yet that's the task. That's the great task, to be able to go into these spaces. It's synonymous with what we're talking about in the previous weeks of doing shadow work, going into our own individual shadow. There's no other way to do it. You got to get in there and bring the light with it. Not to discount the shadow with light, because then again, that's just going to be more shadow, but to balance it. So, how can we, I think the great task ahead of us is to not cast out our materialism, not cast out all the knowledge we gain, not cast out all the technology, but how to bring that into balance. That's the real task. It's not just the task of our survival, it's the task of what we're really here to do in a psycho-spiritual perspective, according to Steiner and other people. I think Teilhard de Chardin talks a lot about this too, and I think Jung would completely agree with this kind of perspective. But so let me continue here with the rest of this. That's about half of it. Let me read the rest of it here. So again, this is just a recap. This is saying that, in some sense, we're meant to be here. Christ knew this, and Christ, in some sense, has been absorbing the suffering of this. And as we're talking about this too, like, I know we have a diverse group of people here of all kinds of different ideologies and religious backgrounds or spiritual backgrounds, or none at all. That's fine. I think when we're talking about this, we can either take this literally. Either there really is these entities called Lucifer and Ahriman, or they're just mythic, symbols to represent psychic content that's in our collective unconscious. Either way, I think that these are forces that are operating in our world, no matter what we call them. They're real forces, and we just need to recognize that. And they're real elements of the game, so to speak, that we're playing. And that's the way I take it, at least. Whether it's literal or not, they actually are real forces. So.
And maybe kind of like fire, it can be used for good and it can be
Yeah.
used for evil. And so it's just
Yeah.
something we need to be very cognizant of its power.
Yeah.
Kind of
And
like
that's the first thing, is just to recognize this. If we're not recognizing this, we're even more lost. And we don't even know what we're doing. Then we're just reaching for the light, thinking we have to somehow get away from the shadow. But it's about the balance. So it is within the power of every human being to face and overcome the first two of the three temptations. But the third is connected with the deepest mystery of all, that of the transmutation of substance. The world in our time is face to face with difficult and seemingly insoluble problems in the economic realm, in which not only governments, but every individual is involved. Love how this just gets into economics. Today, it is the turn of the scientists to recognize that there is more to the world than meets the eye, unless it has opened itself to see. In the new developments of anthroposophical medicine and agriculture, we have the seeds of the future in our hands, which are now beginning to be used in many parts of the world. To forge the bridge of understanding between industrialized science and these new developments is more and more urgent. The time will come when it will be generally understood that since the turning point of time, the seed of love is within the earth, for ever since that time, there have been human souls who have known it, and there will be more and more. Many today are being drawn back to Lucifer, following cults which have their roots in the past. But many know that Ahriman must be faced by a power of an intellect equal to his own. Bookmark that, Jamin. Let's read that again. But many know that Ahriman must be faced by a power of intellect equal to his own, yet raised, clarified, and warmed through by the quality of the love which will grow from the seed which has been sown for the future.
Wow.
The path inevitably leads through pain and suffering. It is the picture of the cross of the three earth dimensions which dominates in the world today. The cross was actually understood as a symbol in the 3rd and 4th century after the mystery of Golgotha. Millions are starving in a world of seeming plenty. There is so much suffering. The forests are dying in an otherwise all too light-hearted world. Humanity, too, hangs on the cross. Today, it is not only the one being, the 3 in 1 and the 1 in 3, who makes the supreme sacrifice. I think that's referring to Christ. But men, women, and children, let's say the animals and the trees and the forests, the world over. Human violence is echoed in our day by the very violence of the earth herself, as the wrath of the elemental beings is expressed in civil and natural catastrophe. Cool. We are called to awaken to what is really happening and to begin to recognize in truly modern scientific terms the laws and truths which have always been and always will be those of the eternal worlds of spiritual being. So that's it. That's what I had basically read that first day when I came across this book in David E. Lancey's apartment, interestingly synchronistic. And my first thought, I kind of captured some of the first part of that, of recognizing, oh, this Ahriman entity that's, let's zoom in a little bit, that this is ruling, this Ahriman is fully ruling us basically right now, almost fully. All the technology, the internet, 5G, AI, these things you could say are products of this vast path of materialism. Yet what I realized, though, was that it's somehow meant to be, and that it comes down to this balancing act again. And so, because as a technologist of several decades, and many of us here have backgrounds in science and technology, I've been very pro-tech most of this time. And it's only been in the last year or so I've been really beginning to question the extent to where we're going and how precarious and delicate it is now, particularly with things like virtual reality and artificial intelligence. And things like the question of 5G is just a question right now, like what's really going on with 5G and all this. So I think it just takes a lot more discernment, and I don't believe we need to throw it all out. It's just we need to be highly discerning. And I think 5G is just a great example of this. Like what's really going on there. Is the implementation of that technology going to harm us or hurt us more than it's good? And beginning to make those decisions or find new ways to run that, the application of that kind of technology, find a new way to do it, in a different scientific way that's not harmful to us, where we can still sustain life and progress in our pursuit of meaning in the world. Like religion and spirituality, these are vehicles of meaning too. And how do we birth a new vehicle of meaning for humanity that will probably include, so I include these technologies. So I tend to think of it as a symbiotic thing. That's the first image I got, was like, oh wow, these things are really, humanity has some kind of symbiotic relationship with Ahriman, actually. There's a symbiotic relationship there. It's like facing our own shadow. Maybe it is just our own shadow. Maybe it's just contents of the collective unconscious. Whatever it is, it's there, and it's been driving us for a long time, and it's woven into money and materialism and science and technology in all these ways. And just becoming aware of it's the first step. Becoming really aware of it as an aspect of our reality, and totally critical element of the path we're on right now and stepping forward. And what I bookmarked there, Jamin, and I'll stop after this and just open up the conversation for discussion. But that thing I bookmarked was just that where he says, or Olive says, many know that Ahriman must be faced by a power of intellect equal to his own, yet raised, clarified, and warmed through by the quality of the love which will grow from the seed, which has been sown for the future. When I read that, I think of artificial intelligence. I think of collective intelligence. I think of artificial intelligence. I think that's the crux point that we're looking at over the next decades, is that the real balance of this whole thing will probably converge in AI and collective intelligence somehow. And what we're doing here with radical collective intelligence of combining, human collective intelligence with the advents of machine learning and AI to really tease out that symbiotic potential and raise the whole thing to something new that hasn't happened before, where we basically were perfecting our quest through the dark material sciences. And then as we go forward in time for decades and centuries from now, we will have mastered that balance in such a deep way. That's what I'm considering, is what's ahead of us. How to do that exactly, I don't know. But it seems like that's kind of like a map, what's happening.
Love it, Michael. Oh my goodness. What comes to me is that it's really the collective superintelligence, which is grounded in not just human intelligence, but human benevolence meets human intelligence, coming at it with the intention that we bring to it. How do we save life on Earth? How do we transform our world to a long-term, sustainable, compassionate, loving, joyous place where the birds are acknowledging it, where we're all in love with each other and in love with life, and it's just love all around. That's what we're doing right here. And I would differentiate that from like pure AI, where it's like, some previous version of Jamin, just like into the code, more. And we create this strong AI, and then we say, now go out into the world. What is your order for me to do? Make money. Okay, money for who? For me. And so that's the dark side of just strong AI for personal advantage, right? Whereas what we're doing here is, yes, we're using technology, but it's clear who's driving the ship. I laugh when I say that. Well, it's clear who's driving the ship here. Anyway, it just seems like the most hubris statement. Well, it's not clear, but what we're bringing to it is our benevolent intention of saving life and transforming life in purely good ways. What occurs to us is good, but then that begs the question, what is good? Anyway, but that's my 2 cents. And wow, what a great opener you've created for us, Michael, for conversation. So I'm going to go on mute and encourage everyone to jump in. We're a small group, relatively small group. So everyone just feel free to jump in.
So my question in relation to what's just been said, even deeper than saving all life on Earth, I don't even know if that's possible. We're not gods. We might get there someday, who knows? But at this point, we're not. So what I see is, if it in the same tone you were describing it, Jamin, I'm just going to add a little more to that in the context of what you're creating here, Michael, is that what I see now as our task is, what is AI going to serve? And for us, as far as I can see, if it's not a higher evolution of our consciousness, so we really can start to get serious about Ahriman and everybody else, and how we're going to include all that into our future, since we're obviously material beings, and a lot of what Ahriman is about seems to be impermanence, in dealing with the fact of materiality, which has a limited time span here on planet Earth, especially if you're in a physical human body or any other living form of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we eat? First of all, how do we eat that one? And that's one of the central quests of anything spiritual, and spiritual in the sense specifically of evolution of consciousness, refinement of consciousness, taking consciousness to a place that doesn't yet exist in the vast majority of people. What we're doing here, I see it more and more when we use the words like love and light and conscious, conscious superintelligence, all these things. We are trying to evolve our consciousnesses here to rise to the occasion, to start to contribute to humanity in a way that's going to spread and influence other people, other groups, hopefully like this, where we can start coming together more and more and start having conscious conversations and start being the thing we're talking about. If we don't save our lives first, how the heck are we going to even create a conversation about anybody else's life? And how are we going to do that first? First of all, we got to wake up. If we don't wake up to the situation we're in, not just in terms of the bad things that are happening, but also in terms of those shadow sides of ourself that we don't really like people probing into. But there are ways we can go about that, where we are create situations where we can honestly say, this is my shadow. And then everybody else can come in and say, well, you know what? There's so many different sides can look at that. We can bring light on that shadow. Mm-hmm. And so I'll just offer up at this point, because I felt like, Michael, you were really bringing up a very radical point there, is from my own life experience, when I finally met Ahriman, because I understand what that means. It's the collectivization of all our egos. That's all it is. Or you can call it the universalization if you want, if it's a higher force, whatever it is. But there is definitely something there of a higher intelligence that's locking us all into this, our own worst enemy, which is our ego, for any of us. But the deepest thing I discovered, and this is classic, and I don't know if it really stems from a warrior tradition, but having been a martial artist since I was 14 and been on that path, but as a spiritual path, as what I like to think of as a bodhisattva warrior, maybe not always, but at least more recently, I would hope so. But in any case, what the ultimate challenge for me was, and some video games that are really cool video games where you got to go through all these levels, and I'm not into that stuff, but I had relatives that were. When they got to the ultimate battle was you had to face your own shadow. And how the heck do you get through that one? How do you face the personalization of that Ahriman right in front of you? It's your ultimate last final test. This really actually happened for me. And when I got there, I realized that there was something preventing me from a true and permanent awakening. That I had times where I got in touch with it. It always disappeared. It wasn't constant. And I realized that if it wasn't constant, then there was always going to be this kind of miserableness, and the conditioning was ruling my being more than I was ruling my being, more than my true source was ruling my being. And
what needs to be constant?
What needs to be constant is a connection to source, not to the misery, not to what we've been ingrained to believe is our ultimate, that we're just material beings. That's Ahriman's con. We're just material beings when we're done. It's why Trump acts the way he does, because he doesn't think he needs to take into responsibility. When he leaves here, he's done. He's only a material creature. That's as far as his consciousness goes, for example. That's why he can justify the actions he does, or anybody like that. I don't want to get lost on that. So in facing that ultimate shadow, I gave up, because I said, I can't beat you. There's no way I'm ever going to get around you. You win. So I said to that place in myself, demons take me. So this is a perfect backdrop you gave. I said, demons take me. And literally in that moment, I must have been total, because all the energy went out of my body. I was sitting at my workshop desk or workshop table in this back room. I was living in Centro-Doppio, a beautiful place in Italy, and I was a handyman at the time. But I was in my back little room, dark little room where the boiler was and all my tools were. And I had a moment, I guess it was lunch, I can't remember. Yeah, it was 12:18, I remember the time exactly. And so I lost all will to live and any energy, and I started to fall into this deep abyss that they talk about, the fathomless abyss. Well, I went straight into that because I gave up to the demons. And but that's when something happened, like you were talking about. It went to the extreme darkness, and then the light opened, and then the grace came through, and then I got clear about my life, and I knew what I had to do. And that was just the beginning of it. That evolved over time, but it was just so powerful that the minute you give up and you surrender and you realize and you give total reality to that ego, the ego shows its true face, which is non-existent. It doesn't exist, not in the way we think it does. And yes, I still have an ego. I use it to relate to it, to do what I do. It's a focusing tool now. That's what the ego is good for. It's for bringing everything into high focus. And then you can go, aha, because that's what it used to do about me. It used to bring me into high focus. Well, like what James was saying, what do I want? More money, this, that. That's what the ego does when it's faced this way. The minute you give up, it becomes something you are the master of, and now it's your focusing tool. Instead of it focusing you, you're focusing it. And I never got that before till just now. So that's what's the beauty of these conversations is when you can start to bring it out with people who may have also, I'm guessing, have had a similar experience in their life where they had to go through that, because that's the determining point. Because after that, the barrier between life and death was no longer there for me. And I share this many times, and a lot of people, until they've had this experience, probably think I'm a nut and I'm just making stuff up and I'm lost in some kind of psychological fantasy wannabe, but I'm not, because the proof is in the pudding when I do my work with people, that there is the capacity to have conversation with beings of all forms of intelligence. Just because they don't have a material form like us doesn't mean you can't localize them and then express your intent toward them and the desire to communicate with them, including Ahriman, including Lucifer, including all of them. I mean, and but I would well, never mind. I won't go into recommendations at this point, because for a lot of people, what I'm sharing is just.
Do you have Ahriman's phone number? I'd like to talk with him.
Yeah, well,
his cell phone, actually. I want his cell phone.
Yeah,
I
think you know where he lives just as well as I do. And anyway, so I just wanted to share that. It's just
an Apple computer.
Yeah. And so bringing it back around to technology, look what we've done with the material realm. Look how we can use it as a window into so many different things. We've created a window through our technology into the whole world now.
Yeah.
To talk about a good side of what we can do with that art. I mean, to me, and so that ultimately is in the context of what you're saying, and I hope this is an offering towards what you're sharing that can help empower this discussion into a whole lot of different things. But once I realized that truth in myself, and I realized that two things. One is that, yes, we can all awaken, but two is we can also be who we are. We don't have to sacrifice that. We can have our shadow. We can have all these things.
Yeah.
It's up to us. If we have love for ourselves, then that's included in it, because we are on this planet. The difference is that shadow becomes more like our power, rather than rather than our enemy or our whatever, our temptation or whatever. Yeah, if you want to be tempted, do it consciously. Yes, I'm tempted totally, and probably for good reason. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, the whole edge of the shadow is replaced by a kind of motivating force that is also something. Sometimes we need to get a poke from the fork of a devil rather than the wings of an angel. And that works too. So what's wrong with it? So I really learned the thing about, and I'll share it into the spaces, and I don't know if you've heard of it, you may have, but yes, there's the Buddha, the wings of the angel, but there's also the Zorba, which is the poker of the devil. Sometimes you got to go in and do crazy things, and be in the middle of a very serious undertaking and start dancing just for the heck of it. The Zorba, break the pattern sometimes in ways that are beautiful and that won't offend people, and you can get away with. And sometimes that's a way to break the hold, that the conditioning that has held so many people in its grasp for so long. And the secret is, we're all taught to repress our dark side, to not be who we are, to do all those things. In the end, you have to totally accept that ego of yours and let it win. Once that happened, that's all the ego ever wanted to be right. The minute you go, yeah, you're right, I give up, demons, I give up, take me. Then guess what? Yeah. You just became master of your ego. Wow, that is so counterintuitive. But it really takes, what it took me to get to that place where I could really face my ego was an absolute hatred of myself for about 2 weeks, where I had no more patience with my inability to awaken. And so I was just like, for 24/7 for a couple of weeks. It was not an easy place to be in. I gave myself no quarter. I said, it's either you or me. One of us has got to go. as kind of the attitude I had, you know, and it was just, and it's, I understand now why that Russian mystic Gurdjieff calls it the ballet of the sorcerers, the dark and the light. But in the end, what happened is they both dissolved into each other and became this third force, I guess you could say. It's more like that now, where both are available. Both are available and both are beautiful. And sometimes I'm a Zorba and sometimes I'm, you know, an idiot, but I don't care. I mean, so that, I'm guessing somebody will learn something from that when I do things stupid. Sometimes like, oh, you probably really shouldn't do it that way. So they just learn something from me being an idiot. Just to bring it down to the most human level. Sometimes, like Lao Tzu, that great teacher Lao Tzu of the whole Taoist tradition, he would sometimes play the fool and be a complete idiot so that people, his disciples go, no, you know, and they'd learn, and immediately he'd pull out their teacher in such a subtle way by doing things like that. So it's not always that we have to be the know-it-all and I'm no, you know, sometimes be a Zorba who makes a mistake and stubs his toe or runs into a wall or, you know, insult somebody, you know, and then that gives them a chance to say, you know, there's a better way to say that, you know, or so anyway. I just, that's what I learned from the Ahriman thing, and what you've been hinting at is, yeah, we need all our sides. We need to be that Zorba too, that's human, that makes mistakes, that isn't afraid to dance in a serious proceeding or say the wrong thing sometimes, just to help people bring out their teacher, you know, because sometimes that's the only way people will bring out that higher, the higher in themselves, is by being presented with something where they have to tell somebody. But hey, maybe that, you know, so just opening it up to some possibilities there through actual live through experience, because to me that's always the best way to share these complex concepts that you're introducing, is by hopefully having some actual experience that
Absolutely.
because that to me touches people more than, you know. Anyway, so that's, I'll just
great you're reminding me, well, you're reminding me of some experiences I've had multiple times in my life, literally things getting very dark and scary in a way I can't quite understand and describe. And I'm also, it was years later, I read the book by Eckhart Tolle. I think it's called The New Earth or one of these. And he talks about Eckhart Tolle, who's, you know, I guess apparently enlightened. He talks about his experience of how that happened, where, you know, he was a different person, highly depressed, suicidal. And then one evening, this force of darkness descended on him and was basically obliterating him. He thought he was dying. And he woke up the next morning, and he heard this tweeting of a bird outside before he opened his eyes. And he says it was just so clear, like clearer than he'd ever heard in his life. And he opened his eyes, and then he just slowly moved through his apartment and went outside and sat on a park bench and began just talking with people about enlightenment. And that was it. So yeah, there's these stories. There's definitely something there. And then he extends that in his book to talk about that. Yeah, that's the, he calls it the pain body, or the, you know, the ego. And the collective has this too. There's a collective pain body, there's a collective ego, and that's the source of power. There's great energy there. And I think of the analogy too, like a lotus flower in a pond. You know, you have the roots stuck down in the muck, the deep, dark, icky muck. Ugh. And then you have this beautiful, fragrant petal up here. Well, you can't get the bloom without all that muck. That's where all the nutrients are at. That's where all the energy's at. And you have to have the whole thing to be the flower. And so, yeah, I've had some experiences in my life too, and it is good to share those to some degree, I think. Yeah, and at least that we're enough inspired to continue looking or orientating ourselves as individuals in whatever way is natural for us.
Well, I mean, really, it's just, it was for me personally, it was of that caliber of, and Gangaji also has expressed the same thing. And when she described her moment, I just said that is the moment. I mean, because before that experience with me, and after that experience with me, The person who was before that experience happened is ceased to exist after that moment.
Yeah.
That's how global in terms of my experience, or universal, however you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
how determining that experience was for me. There was no more the same person, because that limitation that I had before, or many limitations that I had before that experience that I didn't even know were limitations, because I didn't know what I didn't know until after that experience.
And we could say that that's what's happening right now for all of us collectively. You know, that if you're on Facebook, that's just the talk. Like, wow, everything's going to be different after this. This pandemic situation. This is huge. We're not going back to normal. Everything's going to be different. Let's hope that's the case. I think it will be. It's definitely going to be to some degree. Hopefully more so than not. You know, like because as what's so clarified. You know, I'm sure everyone's so aware of this. You know, the pictures of the Himalayas. Wow, like there's no smog in the Himalayas. There's no smog in LA. All the sheep are coming out into downtown Manhattan. All this kind of crazy stuff. It's like, wow, look what happens when you put humanity on pause. This has never happened before. Because before this, they're all saying, no, we can't save the environment because we cannot slow down the economy. It's impossible. We can't slow it down. We can't slow it down. Well, look, we just did. Oh, you're gonna get sick? Oh, now we'll slow it down. Oh, it's you're gonna get sick? Oh, now we'll slow it down. Oh, so isn't this interesting? What an illuminating moment. And you know, it's really not, and it's a bit of one of these shadow experiences. Not even that drastic. I mean, I've mentioned this before. I'm of this perspective that I think we're going to need these kinds of experiences. I think it does. It takes direct experience to have a top-level transformation of the psyche. You can't just read books to fully transform the psyche. You have to have an experience to. That's what it seems to be. What seems to be the case in these kinds of experiences you're describing, you know, and others too. And so I think even collectively, this situation now is a great opportunity for all of us as a collective and a society, and all of us as individuals to really contend with, you know, like, what are we scared of losing? Some people are they're so afraid of having their freedom removed. Oh my God, you can't go to the grocery store whenever you want. Oh my God, you can't visit your Aunt Susie whenever you want. You weren't visiting your Aunt Susie anyways, you know? Or, you know, I'm personally not affected by that. Because I've been I like to stay at home a lot anyways, so I'm not that affected by it. But other people, yeah, everyone has their thing. You know, everyone's being affected in a different way, and that's good. And yeah, this is one of those moments, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems. I would definitely agree with the fact that that moment is going to come for a lot of people. But in terms of the overall population of the total, you know, humanity on Earth, it's going to be more than it has been, because in the past we've only had, you know, a handful here and there. But I think that's going to jump. It's going to take a quantum leap, and we're going to be talking more like about, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 or more people of that caliber that in the past we would call and reserve for people like the Gangajis or the Eckhart Tolles. I think that's going to become more. And I see that even right now as we speak, I have a feeling there's, you know, an individual here or there across the planet that this experience that we're all going through collectively is serving as a catalyst for their, you know, facing their shadow and just getting eaten alive by it, and realizing that all that did was basically remove the limitations of the ego. And now here's the light. Now you're going to be in touch with that. Now you're never going to be separate from it anymore. Obviously there's going to be day-to-day activities where your consciousness is going to be focused on completing those activities. But whenever you're at rest again, it's not going to be the old place of something's missing. It's going to be the place of, oh, geez, I found something, and I've got to get this out. I've got to get this out in whatever way I can. In fact, I can't really stop it because it's bigger than me, and it's going to come out whether I like it or not. So in the end, it's really, the thing is, do I choose to be the fool and just pretend like I'm ordinary? Because some Sufis do that, and they have beautiful. Some of the people in their history and their transmission, their very rich transmission of awakened beings, play the fool and did things you just don't do because it upsets humanity at large and you get punished for it. But it set those events in the history books irremovably. They're there now. And some people who know how to look go, wow, that guy actually said it to the public at large, knowing full well he was going to be crucified for it. but he did it anyway.
Mhm.
And so now with the strength of what's growing in our collectives here, it's like, I want to see that more people, that we set, and it's a tricky thing, that we set the circumstances, that we set a situation up where people can't help but stumble into that place, because of the growing of this phenomenon, that of people being awakened. And there's always the tradition of, if they're wise, they don't say they're wise. I say bullshit. I say, if you're wise, you might want to say that now, because there are people out there that need to hear that, so they have the courage to step into what it's going to take to be wise themselves. We need it now. That to me outstrips the old idea of, and to me that's a very subtle spiritual ego that says, I'm so wise I don't have to say I'm wise. Well, says who? According to who? I mean, and why are you not being honest if you're wise? Why aren't you saying you're wise? Well, because I just show it in my behavior and what I do. Yeah, but you need to show it in what you say and how you think too. It's not just what you do. We're not just 1/3 of the equation. We're not just a 1/3 thing walking around doing stuff. We also say things. We also think things. We see things. So to me, it's like, but I only would ever mention that in terms of myself or somebody like right now in this space, in relation to the fact that we're all headed that way, and we all need to head that way if we really want to pretend we're going to do something that's going to impact humanity in a way that starts to change the course of events. And I think we actually have that potential, and we do have more than just a handful of incredible teachers on the planet now. I'm thinking we have more in the neighborhood of hundreds. And it could be getting to that place where it could be 10,000 Buddhas. And I don't see that anything less is going to do it. We need that kind of a powerful influence of beings that are absolutely in touch with their shadow. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. When I see enlightenment, I like what Adyashanti says. It means you see things the way they freaking are. And a spade's a fucking spade. You need to see it. You need to be aware of what's going on in the down and dirty. And and I like that side. I mean, he also comes from many other places, but I thought that was very beautiful, because not too many people, so-called enlightened teachers, will put it out like that. You also have to see the darkest side too. The true enlightenment includes the whole spectrum, from Ahriman to the source and back again. However you want to say it, doesn't matter. It's your, in the end, it's your own ego is the only thing preventing you from having contact with that at all times. And then that ego becomes your best friend. It becomes you being able to put on any number of hats, depending on what, you can change your costumes, whatever the scenario is. So I really see that, Michael. And I feel, I relate with you, and I see another empty mirror like me when I relate with you. And I want to start to acknowledge that more in people that I see that have that capacity, and also be honest and acknowledge it in those people that have paid with their very literally, like your death in a way you had to go through. That's what it takes. It takes a tremendous amount of dedication, and then one day you just give it all up. But the energy has to be built. You have to pay the piper. You've got to be at a volcano ready to explode. Then when you let go, that's when the transformation happens. It's that much intensity it takes.
I'm reminded of Rudolf Steiner, who I've known about him for a long time and just beginning to discover him. He's so vast, also so well integrated. But he talked a lot about agriculture too. He's really big on plants, but plants in this like really spiritual perspective. Finally, what he says is that a plant, go outside in the springtime and go look at a dandelion or whatever, a tree, any kind of plant, and he's not the only one that says this, but basically saying that any form like this, you have a material form like a plant that's growing, seed starts from a seed. It actually begins as an etheric form. There's an etheric quality that pre-exists that form, and then that material is then moving. Well, actually, it's like, I think it's both. It goes both ways. It's just that the material form is moving into that optimal etheric template, and at the same time, the etheric form is pushing through the material reality at the same time. And humans are the same way. We're like plants. We're like really elaborate plants. And that we also, not just morphologically in our physical beings, we grow from a child to an elderly person and everything in between. And that kind of morphology of physical form, but also in psychological and intrapersonal form. We grow and change and evolve, and we bloom at the time that we bloom, and seed when we seed, and maybe we bloom multiple times in a lifetime. Every human being is so different. We're all like a unique plant, so to speak, that share similar qualities. So I tend to think of that too, in that, and then extending that out to the large picture of what we're doing collectively. We're like one big collective plan. We've had this very, very long progression, and again, looking what's happening right now. Just a year ago, we're all, so many of us are saying we have to change this, we have to change that, we have to change this. Why aren't we changing? And then boom, pandemic, something real, material is threatening your life. Oh, now we really want change.
Yeah, that's Mother Nature, boy. She can come in and we're talking about it. And she says, okay, here, now you're going to do it.
And what's even, I was thinking today about, like, well, even considering this virus, so without getting into any of the politics or conspiracy theory for a moment, not to discount or count that, just to leave it aside for simplicity's sake, how did this virus form? If what Steiner's talking about is true, if all forms, especially all natural forms like plants, are really manifestations of what's first an etheric formulation, what's this virus about? And maybe in some ways it's what came in at just the right time. That maybe we really, really need this. Clearly we do. And maybe we need more things like this. I don't know what's going to happen, but and that maybe it's even part. It's also a part of the collective of this planet. The dolphins, the giraffes, everything. It's all one big collective thing, including the bacteria. The viruses have been around for a long time. All these microorganisms have been here longer than we have. It's all one collective thing. It's like there's this balance happening. Like, yeah, our materialism is getting out of control. We've gone too far. Clearly, we've fucking gone too far. It's been so freaking absurd the last few years. And maybe this virus is part of us, actually, a manifestation of the shadow, in order to get us to look at our own shadow, that we're like a virus too. And all these, there's so many aspects to it. It's kind of beautiful in a way, that we're just growing like this plant. Not to discount the real effects and the real deaths that are happening to real people. It's a very sad thing, but maybe we're just right on time. Maybe we're growing like a collective plant. Maybe we're right on time.
Beautiful. All right, James has his hand up. Go for it, James.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I agree there with what you're saying there. Like it could be looked at as a result of like a symbiotic relationship or combined relationship in nature, figuring out a solution, and the virus, as the experts said, it's going to more or less affect or infect 70, we say, at least % of the planet. And that means, like, collectively, as we're all now confined and everything, 70% of the planet, if you look at it, are going to be confronted with their mortality. And therefore, as Dharmendra was saying, when they're faced with that, they're not going to come back from that the same way. Mm-hmm. So it is creating a transformation of thought, and I see that, and that's the way I see it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when we're confronted with our real immortality, we're like, all plants die, all things eventually change form. What's left then? What's left at those moments? As we get whittled down to reflecting on what's most meaningful about this life. What's left? What are the last things that would be most meaningful?
Sorry, what's the last thing? What, Michael?
Well, I'm just saying, I haven't died yet, but in this life, but I've imagined it. And as I grow older, we tend to mature in our perspective. We can, at least there's the opportunity to mature in our perspective. What's most meaningful? We get back to this conversation of value and meaning, which is just so pervasive in the conversation, I think, and look what's happening now. Everyone's kind of dying a little bit, even if we're not catching the virus and literally dying in a physical way. There's a lot of dying happening. Facebook's just going berserk. Like I'm just reminded of some examples. Some people are just so threatened by the idea of losing their freedom. That the government's going to come in. Then they probably will. This is probably an aspect of it that we're going to. It's kind of like 9/11 again, where they're going to creep in and take some more footholds in at least monitoring our freedom. And it is threatening. I value that too. I can't say I don't value that, but it's that's another type of death. Death is when we die, we lose the freedom of being here. And so what's most valuable while we're here? And everyone reflecting on that, and the people we love. Like I'm really loving my parents a lot more right now. Like wow, I could just feel so bad if something happened to my parents from this. I don't think it will, but that's what's really clarifying for all of us in various ways. What's most valuable to people. It's really showing what's really valuable to people. It's kind of bringing everything up: health, money, the economy's falling apart. We all have to stay home. You can't go out. You can't just go out anytime you want, I guess. That might be cramping down more. So like some of these fundamental values are really being snipped, dying, at least temporarily, maybe permanently. We don't know.
If you think about it, Michael, it's almost like we've all been confined to monasteries because the rules in monasteries are almost like are like sometimes even more intense than what we're experiencing now. So what a perfect opportunity. Like I think it was Myra was like, if you can't go out, go in. What a perfect opportunity. And for those people who get that, that's the beauty of this, is because there are people who are going to get that and start to head toward what we've been sharing a lot of.
I get it. And what's interesting is this morning I had a little bit of like, oh no, not that. Because I'm fully comfortable. Basically, it really hasn't changed my life much at all. I stay home a lot. I go visit my girlfriend a couple of times a week. Basically, I go to the grocery store less. Okay. Otherwise, I'm pretty much living the same I've been living for the last couple of years since I moved up here to Mount Shasta. I came into Mount Shasta to kind of put myself in my own little monastery a lot. But I get outdoors a lot. I love the outdoors here. So I was just out yesterday. I had this incredible hike up into one of my favorite areas in this region, where it was just such a beautiful, beautiful day. Like one of the best days I can remember in at least 6 months. Kind of felt like summer. And then I came home last night and I saw someone posted that Santa Cruz, the county of Santa Cruz, California, has, for the next, I think just over the weekend, maybe the next week or so, they've closed all trails and parks and beaches. No one, with a freaking $1,000 fine. If you're caught on a trail hiking this weekend, you're going to get charged $1,000. If you surf this weekend, $1,000. You can't go anywhere now in Santa Cruz. Oh my God, what if that happened here? So I had a little bit of that. Like, whoa, what if I couldn't even go outside and hike?
Same thing here in the Seattle area. They've closed down parks and beaches and all that. So that's like it's the one breathing space that the Seattleites have, and it's closed out. So yeah.
They did some close down here in Siskiyou County a couple of weeks ago. Like they've closed down some like the day use areas, which I don't care about that. I just want to use the trails. But if they did like a complete closure of trails and everything, like, whoa. I don't know if they've done that in Seattle or not, but the fact that it happened in California in another county is me like, whoa. But I'll survive, like you're saying, right, Dharmendra, then okay, then, what other freedom can be found? Like, like, can we, that freedom dies, that freedom dies, that freedom dies. What's the ultimate freedom?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, and I think it goes right back to ultimately balance. It's like, to me, the ultimate freedom must come from the ultimate balance. But then that balance has to be taken into, it's like, how do we balance what we're going through now? And if it gets tighter and more restricted, how do we continue to maintain the balance? Because that's where we keep our freedom. Because we get to keep actualizing who we are. Mm-hmm. We just keep finding, okay, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, but I'm still here, and I'm still conscious, and I can still,
wow,
I can do this.
Ooh,
and
freedom to breathe.
I guess we got to find new ways that they haven't discovered yet how to, or they don't even know how yet to stop us, and they probably won't, because I don't think it's going to get that far. It may get a little further, but I just see that we're really being challenged now in our freedom. And really, what is freedom? One of the ultimate values to me is freedom, along with truth and a few others. But freedom is definitely, like, in terms of our physical being and our capacity to do, freedom is like utmost. It's like, my God. But then if we have to experience a kind of non-doing, which is still doing, it's just the absence of it, it's still part of the Tai Chi, the yin yang of doing and non-doing. So how do we find the freedom there then? That's what we're talking about. Can't go out, go in, and it's like, whole new freedom there. Oh, and I think so many people, and I think Mother Nature is so wise, because she is increasing the frequency on the planet of consciousness, which obviously means a lot more people than there used to be, that we're used to from the past, are right on that edge now. A little push is all they need, maybe, What a perfect place to create the world as a one big monastery. Yeah, you're going to have to deal with yourself, face the people you live with, and you're just going to have to handle that, whether you like it or not. And this is where it's at. Mother Nature said so.
Yeah. Yeah,
I do too. I'm like a lot more like what you're talking about. It's like, okay, no big deal.
People are getting stirred up. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, Myra got so stirred up, she raised her hand. So let's, and I also want to welcome our friend Sandy, who just joined. Welcome, Sandy. And Myra, you have the floor. Take it away.
Thank you, Jamin. I wanted to say that at the beginning, when I first heard Michael talk about the 5G, I was just like that mode of, I'm not too sure. But I've been doing a lot of research about it, and it's definitely devastating to see within the research that I did, to see how it's drying up our trees, those towers. I know that when you compare a human to something else that has life, obviously we're very similar to animals, especially monkeys and all that, but I found myself very connected to trees. I don't know if I told you guys at the last block party during the Divine Feminine that we had, and realizing that whole lack of involvement that 5G towers due to trees is devastating. It truly is. And if we want to keep on being blind about this and not do the research, we are in a very selfish lack of consciousness, because the information is out there. We just have to hear it and then prove it to ourselves. I do honestly believe that this 5G is definitely destroying. If those towers are not shut down, we are going towards a mass destruction, even more worse than what we were already at. I wanted to ask Michael also if last Sunday we did a meditation, and it was like a worldwide meditation. I mean, different organizations, and we did it. Actually, the girl that guided us through it, she is in Czech Republic right now. We were supposed to have events here in Arizona with her, but everything got canceled. So we ended up doing this meditation without even being aware that the day we did the meditation, it was the same day we were going to be doing, I believe, I don't know if it was a concert or a workshop. But the interesting thing that after we did that deep meditation, I probably did it like 3 times during the day, and I was fasting. We know that when we are fasting, we are more clean and we get more connected to the source. The following day, I received a message about there's a group that is called Q.
QAnon.
And,
yeah.
yes, and the fall of the Kabbalah, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that, Michael? For me, it's just hard. It's just hard to swallow. It's just hard to believe.
Well, good question. I honestly, I haven't looked that much into it. I first heard about QAnon at least a year ago, maybe more, maybe a year and a half ago. It was kind of new. And I went into it very heavily for a couple of days or a week, and it seemed very interesting. And I drew no conclusion to it. That's just my approach to a lot of these things, is that we have such complex information objects out these days, things like that, 5G, the virus, QAnon. There's so many of them, and I think I like to do a lot of thorough research before I come to most conclusions. But so I got into QAnon a year and a half ago or something like that. And I got so far into where I knew, okay, if I'm going to get into this, it's going to suck up all my time and energy, and I just don't want to focus on that anymore. The point is, I've said this before on this webcast, is that the last time we talked about the shadow aspects, is that well before QAnon, like in 10 years ago in 2010, I did put aside many weeks of this consistent continual research into the general arena of the Illuminati, of the deep state, of the idea of nefarious actors and groups in the world, pulling strings and doing evil-like things. I went in that very deeply enough till I became convinced that there's reality to it, for sure. And that I also went further to in my own mind, make a model for why I think what motivates them, how they're motivated, and how it's all connected to larger scopes of cosmic forces and all this. And once I made that model for myself, I also realized that part of that whole thing, it's kind of getting back to our topic today, with Ahriman and Lucifer, that I think we want to be really careful with our research of some of these things, like with the Illuminati and the Cabal and things like this, because this is my perspective, at least. Like I go far enough that I go, okay, there's a high probability that this thing's true, and now that's basically all I need to do, and that's all I need to know in order to now balance that in my own life of doing the thing that's going to counter that in my way. Alternative to what I see a lot of people, other people tend to get completely obsessed by that, where it's just we're putting all our attention into the conspiracy theories and these darker aspects, that then you can get so lost in that it loses all balance. And actually, that may be okay for someone too, to do that at some point in their life, like go fully into that, explore it. Is kind of what this larger topic we're talking about, of how humanity's gotten lost in the material realm. We had to go all the way into it in order to now break through the other side. So I think it's an individual path for everyone to decide how far to go into these topics. And I encourage everyone to do it. And I tap back into it now and then just to get get tested things. But with QAnon, I don't know. Again, because if you start to look, you with any of these topics like QAnon or 5G right now, the two sides are so strong. Some people are just completely into QAnon, thinking that it's this person working with Trump and they're dismantling the cabal, and there's probably some truth to that. And other people are like, well, that's just a psyops thing, and it's like completely a double blind. And I don't know. Either way, something funny is going on with it. So I haven't made any conclusion about it. I haven't dipped into it enough recently to really make a coherent conversation about it. But I think, and maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's something happening there that I don't know about that I would need to know. Now I also hold a similar position with 5G. Only in the last few weeks have I begun to really prick my ears more to what could be a fact that 5G really is harmful technology. There seems to be a lot of good evidence for it. I also haven't gone fully into that to make a 100% conclusive stand for myself, but I will be. I want to continue to look into it more and more and more. So, sorry I can't make comment.
No, and it's fine. It's fine with me. And you know what? Sometimes when we get into something and we go dip inside of that, we get lost.
Yeah.
When I first started hearing about all that situation, it was about a year ago, and to be honest with you, I completely ignored it. I was like, that's just too crazy. That's too crazy even for me to think about.
Yeah. Which is another form of getting lost in some ways. So if we fully ignore something, so yeah, it's all about balance. It's about being aware of all these things, kind of mapping out, going, okay, there's QAnon, 5G, and I kind of make probabilities now. Like, QAnon's probably mostly real. 5G detriment is probably mostly real, but I don't know. But at least, yeah.
Well, on
going
Monday,
into it enough that we're aware of it, but not ignoring it, but not getting lost in it completely.
Yes, definitely. On Monday, I don't know if it was a mistake or not. I try not to see my life as I made mistakes. It's more like of opportunities just to open up more to what's really happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I did saw like a 3-hour video, me and my son. Mm-hmm. And it was about the whole situation, about the Q and JFK and too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I felt sick after I watched that. I couldn't sleep the whole night. Yeah. I felt like I wanted to throw up. And for me to feel sick like that, I was doing a video call with somebody, and that person got freaked out because I'm water. And that person is like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing? He's like, I don't know. You keep on getting yourself blurry, and I have really good connection. At that time, I knew that my aura was just still sick. Mm-hmm. And I've been receiving other articles without even asking for it. And I'm like, you know what? I need to stop this. I'd rather keep myself in the light. Mm-hmm. If anything is going to unfold, just let it unfold by itself. But if I get into that, it's getting lost into my emotions, and I don't want that.
Yeah. And you notice how that's reflected in social media right now, where there's so much contention and fighting.
Yeah.
And most of that is from people getting fundamentally involved, like absolute idealism, like either extreme left, extreme right, or the political realm, or QAnon, or whatever it has you. And then when we go into these topics so much, we will tend to identify with anything we go into. Whatever we put our attention to, we will tend to identify with it. And so when we're identifying with those deep shadow aspects, then that's where people are just creating more of that. We're just creating more disharmony on our social networks. And maybe some of that's to probably be expected, honestly, probably to be expected for a long time still. But I don't want to participate. I've done enough of it that I notice how I recognize the faculties of my own creativity and intellect to do far greater things than just spin around these conspiracy theories continuously. But at the same time, checking in with them. I still want to be aware and not ignorant of what's going on. So it's just a balance. And I think each of us has to be responsible for how we balance that in ourselves.
And on that note, Michael, It's so true what you say, that the more you dig into that, because in my life I also went into that I went even into the Golden Dawn and how all that works with the Cabal and how they teach all that, but in the end where it led to is kind of things you guys are talking about. And then I kind of went a little bit into that, because if you want to go into that, there's a ton of literature and it gets into some deep, gnarly stuff. And all I had to do was look at one sentence of where that stuff's going, and I see, aha, that's how they get you. Because whether that's true or not, they're teaching you to train your consciousness just to be into really dark stuff. And it's like you say, it's like both you and Myra say, and I also do myself, focus on the light, focus on that stuff, check into the other stuff every now and again. I mean, if you guys aren't aware, like how the last election was by have you guys heard of Cambridge Analytica?
Yeah,
because that's the so those are the things, that's the kind of darkness I'd rather know about, because at least that's verifiable.
Now, I mean, Facebook and YouTube are censoring 5G stuff, so we don't even have access to the knowledge.
Yeah,
what's up with that? Like, they need to stop that. Like,
but what it's telling us is why
to be our parents.
Yeah, but what it's telling us is we've got something we've got to do here that's much more important than what the old humanity that's dying out, that Mother Nature's in doing her best to weed out, making us all become meditators in our little monasteries, in one way or another. And Mother Nature's saying, look, we need to evolve now. So I don't know how else to do it, because you guys have just created such a mess here that I'm just going to create this pandemic. And I know what the government's going to do. It's going to lock everybody down. So now you guys are going to have to face yourselves. I mean, what a perfect scenario. But it's also a perfect time for people to get lost in conspiracy theories and all, because you can go anywhere in that space you're in on your own, right? I mean, there's so much information out there. What are you going to tune your head into? I'd rather do this kind of stuff and bring light to this scenario. And of course, as we do, we need to be aware of the darkness as much as we can,
Well, I have a comment about all this, which is, so, we've all probably experienced, just what like Michael Gaio was talking about, we go deep into this and then we start to identify and it starts to mess with us and all this. Why not go into it together, right, than alone, right? And that's what we're doing here, right? I just wanted to throw that out there, because if we go in it together, you can't get so kind of lost and paranoid like you can if you're just all by yourself at 3:00 in the morning watching YouTube videos. But if we get together and shine the light on it, to quote Dharmendra, yes, we need to explore all these things, but let's do it as a collective. And then likewise, as we think about ourselves as the broader community that we're forming here, certain folks who want to take on researching and picking apart and whatever, do it, but with the lights on. Recorded, broadcast, transcribed. We're digging into this. This is what we're finding out. If anyone wants to join the conversation, join us, and here it is. And then, we kind of divide and conquer that way, right? We have to think of ourselves as a collective humanity, right? Able to divide and conquer and simultaneously solve thousands, tens of thousands of problems holistically and simultaneously.
Totally, Jamin. Yeah, and I think that's a great thing to say, and I would love to see that. For example, for the topic of 5G, I think that'd be really important, because, again, Myra, it's Myra, right? Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I was pretty conclusive a week or two with 5G, and then I saw some new information recently where some apparently an engineer that installs these communication towers was describing in great detail how the banding works, and it seemed to like actually lessen some of the concern. And it's just like I just keep going back and forth. Like, there's always this new information revealed, and like it's so hard to know what's true too. Like I'll see the pictures of the bees dying around the tower, or you just don't know exactly what's true. I think what you're saying is it really takes that. It takes a collective of many different types of individuals to take on a topic like that, and probably over like several conversations to really go deeply. Like, I would just love to see like a Wi-Fi engineer in here talking about his opinion on 5G, or maybe a couple of them, because it's just like, who knows, and everyone else, and to really come to some conclusion with it, because we're right on it. And in some ways 5G is so so critical too, because it's not just about the upgrade from 4G to 5. It's not just a little upgrade. It's such a huge driver. 5G technology is like this linchpin of the new economic order that's supposed to be coming, that so many of the big money holders want. And in some ways it would bring a lot of advantages to our world. But if it's going to fry our bodies and brains, I don't know, then what do we do? Like, so but the first step is to become decisive with it. You have to know what the actual technical material truth is, right?
Maybe they're just experiencing for now.
Yeah.
Experiencing what are the effects.
Someone on Facebook who I respect, I think his name's Mark Bennett. I don't know if anyone else knows him here. He's a really cool guy. And he posted the other day, just two days ago, he said that he intentionally went up to a 5G tower and like climbed inside the gate and like hugged it for like 10 minutes or something. And the next day, he was pooping blood. That's what he said. And I trust what he said is true. Now, he said, there could be some other causation. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe he says he's never bled before in his poop. And the day after he went and hugged this 5G thing, he did. So, that's what I'm talking about, like direct experience, Though I don't want to have to go do that to get my direct experience. So I don't know. It's one of these complicated topics that really needs to get confronted. And then you hear all these countries are banning it. So like there's got to be something to that. Probably, right? I don't know. So who's going to take on the 5G conversation, Jamin?
The collective superintelligence will.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does your friend also hug high voltage power cables also? Is that a thing that he does?
Well, he didn't say he did that. I think he did this just because, well, I don't know. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Maybe it's better to not get up close to some things,
Yeah.
There are risks, you're not supposed to get close to power lines either.
Right. Well, I think that's pretty clear, though, that the power lines, I think most people know those are dangerous. But 5G is we're not sure yet about it. So.
I mean, if he did it, why do you think that it's a high rate of men that die sooner than women? Men have a tendency of doing dumb stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I appreciate that he went and experienced himself, because that way it brings awareness to us.
Yeah, it's a new data.
I think he's a hero. You know what? Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, speaking of heroes, one of my heroes has his hand up. Emery, go for it.
Thanks, Jan. Hey guys, took a little time out there, but I'm back in the seat. About the 5G, I had a comment to make. My comment is this: you have to devote hundreds and hundreds of hours. It's not just simply watching some, like a few dozen, clips of this or that about 5G that you're going to get an understanding about it.
Yeah.
But if you devote and allocate those hours necessary to get a full understanding about it, you're going to discover a few nasty things about it. And logically, you're going to come to some logical conclusions, which, if you're intelligent to a large extent, you've gone to school, you can understand what's going on, and they're hiding it. They've spent trillions and trillions of dollars in that technology. These guys aren't going to give up, and it's linked to other agendas that they have ongoing, to cut the population down to, you know what I mean, Agenda 21 and all this business. It's not necessarily conspiracy. They're doing it right in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
I did a Wakelet thing about it. You know, Dharmendra, I think you saw it. So,
Oh, no, I just wanted to say something real quick based on everything you're saying there, and it's just a short comment. Is wouldn't it be interesting if Mother Nature comes up with a whole new weather pattern that totally messes with 5G? That would be interesting. I don't know where that came from, but.
Exactly.
Well, here's, Emery, you mentioned it's going to take hundreds of hours to get into it, and I totally agree with that. But imagine that, just like, say, understanding a rocket ship. There's probably no one person who totally understands every last detail about a rocket ship. But put together NASA, and you have a collective intelligence that collectively understands the rocket ship. Yeah. Not just understands it, but actually design it. So that's what we're talking about here. And I'm just going to flash on the screen for half a minute this taxonomy that I've been working on, a starter topical taxonomy of big topics. So if this is the taxonomy for stopping the 6 mass extinctions, stopping planetary overheating, these are all the topics that we would need to master if we wanted to transform our world. I'm just putting this up as an example. Now consider a parallel taxonomy about 5G. There's a whole bunch of topics that need to be mastered if we're going to, figure out 5G, really get to the bottom of it. Is it good, bad, or ugly, etc.? Again, we've got to go deep. Welcome, Adam, from sunny San Francisco.
I just want to quickly comment that I agree with that, Jamin, and it was hard for me to ignore, though. I came across a video last week. Maybe some of you have seen it. I don't know if you've seen this one, Jamin. You might find that interesting. That it was a retired Microsoft president in Canada. It was like Microsoft Canada. Did you see this, Jamin? Did you see this video?
No.
It's a really high quality pro video of a retired president of Microsoft Canada. And it's about a 10-minute video, totally lucid and coherent. And he just plainly says it is unhealthy. And I know what I'm talking about. I know people into this, that was, because like, you're right too. Like in order for me to, in order for us to really know something, we have to have direct experience. I need to either go, put my head inside 5G and see what it does to my brain. Unfortunately, then, it's a one-way path. Or I have to do 1,000 hours of research and, fully get a master's degree in, radio technology and all this stuff. Or I would hope that I could refer to, a retired president of Microsoft that he might know what he's talking about. And he was putting his reputation on the line by putting that on YouTube. That's the kind of tip of the scale for me. But then, I posted that on Facebook. And I had people coming in commenting, just hating on him and hating on me and refusing to even watch the video. Well, that's where the topic of 5G and even what you're talking about, it's like, how do we always have to because then that automatically both excluded him from knowledge and me from knowledge about what he had to share, because it just broke down the conversation. Because we had that going. Then that gets back to the collective shadow. That sometimes we don't even want to look. He was so identified in 5G being okay that he can't even watch a video, and spends his time rather trying to take down the character of this retired president, rather than just watch the video.
This is the medium of Facebook, which is not the medium of actual conversations. Yeah. Right here, we're having an actual conversation, and we're developing the social network of actual conversations, or snack, right? And so that's just the wrong medium for it, is the bottom line.
It totally is. It's, absolutely. Glad to be here.
The funny thing is that you invite a lot of people to this type of meetings and they deny. They don't want to hear it.
Right.
They don't even want to know. Like, it's
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Well, this gets to something that we were talking about a bit earlier. I think it was before some of you got back on. So I'll just recap super quick. The idea that in addition to doing what we're doing here with the collective intelligence and having all these transformational meetings and whatnot, that we also find a way to package this and broadcast it to the world. Let me just do a quick, it's a half joke, half thought experiment, right? If you wanted to get the world to come join you doing duck hunting and find out all about duck hunting, would you put up ads in newspapers, on television, or would you do a reality TV show called Duck Dynasty? All right. So here's where I'm going with this, is in addition to having these meetings, and sure, posting them on YouTube, what if we were to package it in a way that it's more digestible, like a reality TV show? And why not create the Duck Dynasty of global transformation? That's one way that we could spin Snack Bar, the social network of actual conversations. Hey, here's this, eclectic group of, long-haired, bearded, not Louisianans going duck hunting, but people all around the world, with heavy concentrations in Ireland, Canada, and all these cool places where we got all these cool people popping in, having these radically transformational conversations about saving life on Earth, right? And, with a menu that might look something like this, right? A menu of conversations. What are you into? You want to talk overpopulation? Great. Click on the link that says overpopulation, and here's a calendar of scheduled meetings on the topic that you can attend. Oh, you want to try before you buy? Great. Watch the previous recordings. One just happened 2 days ago. Oh, is Corona more your thing? Click here. Oh, a new story for humanity. Click here. What are you into, right? Let's not just create one Duck Dynasty of global transformation. Let's create a whole television network of these different micro channels. There's something in it for everyone. Just like if you go to the snack bar, right? Even the vegans will find something that works for them at a snack bar, right? There's something for everyone.
The napkins. Eat the napkins.
Eat the napkins. Sure.
Jamin, what you're saying, I think is so powerful. It seems that before and up to now is kind of like, okay, well, how do we get this done? But now I'm more realizing something that I think we're all starting to catch hold of, is it's about transforming our consciousness first, because we don't realize the power of a transformed consciousness entering into conversations in other arenas and the impact it has in those arenas, and how we can start to infiltrate the society with ideas that can change the world. We may not be like going, okay, let's get this done, let's make this happen, we're feeding everybody. But I think it's what you said recently that kind of made the whole thing take on a whole new dimension, which is, let's start with transforming ourselves first. I think we got that. And it's almost like our reality show is we're like the Transformers, that's our reality show we're creating here, in a sense, at least within us anyway. I mean, I don't know what it would end up being called if it even got there, but it's like, I see it now. It's so important that we focus on this have these transformational conversations there. That's how I wanted to say it. That we have these, they're not just conversations, they're transformational conversations. I like that better than everything we've said, including in collective intelligence, accelerated collective evolution, all of it. We're having transformational conversations. And I know it's transforming me. There's so many things that I'm aware of and in contact with now, and so many people I feel connected with, way more so than 6 months ago when we first had our first transformational conversation that kind of played a big part, I believe, in all of this opening up, and again, for, each of us in our own way, but now together, creating such a much more interwoven, interconnected, powerful, gathering of intelligence and ideas and possibilities. And so anyway, I see that something I think we tend to take for granted, that once we're in tune with this transformational conversation format, I think that's our key right there. That's going to develop. Everything else is going to come out of that. So I just want to acknowledge that transformational conversations. because for me, conversations, I don't know. I mean, that I've had so many conversations with so many people about so many things, and so many times got so bored with so much of it. But I'm not bored with this. This is something that constantly keeps reinventing itself every time and going on to the next thing and the next thing. And we're adding more every time we have a conversation. Even if we go back over the same stuff, there's new pieces entering in. To me, that's a transformational scenario of conversations that's transforming all of us in the process. So it's very beautiful. And on that note, I wanted to just sing that in because I feel it's just such a beautiful thing that, and now I'm understanding why I keep coming back to this, because it's becoming transformation. And it's so beautiful. And on that note, I got to leave. And thank you, Michael, for opening up another incredible space to participate in.
You bet.
And I love participating with you and everybody else in this space. And so, you know, those conversations, those transformational conversations, and I don't know, I just throw in, let's all just be Zorba the Buddhas, man. I mean, what do we got to lose?
Thanks for that, Jender. Totally.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
Really,
Love
really
you.
good conversation.
Beautiful. Let me give a namaste on that one, and I gotta go. Love all you guys.
Love you
so
too.
much fun.
All right, have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Wow, I love what Dharmendra just said. You know, it's like we're just teasing out what is our essence and how do we take it to the world, right? And yes, these are transformational conversations, but I think as an acronym, SNAC bar kind of nails it. The social network of actual conversations, right? Because what does that do? It kind of subtly, I mean, and we can say it explicitly, repositions, you know, Facebook, Twitter, and these other media as, well, if they're not actual conversations, what are they? Bullshit, poison, gossip, little flaming arrows. Well, I'm going to post this and that'll really get their goat. Is that what we're here for? Really? Can we have an actual conversation? 200 species went extinct yesterday. And the projection is 200 per day. I don't know the exact number. Do we really want to spend our time gossiping about who shaved their head? Or that Jamin's hair is too long? I mean, come on, right? We've got life to save here. Let's save life first, and then we can argue about length of people's hair or what the heck we should be doing next. But it's kind of like if there's a fire and there's kids in the attic, right? Rather than sit around and scratch, well, you know, a few more kids, a few less kids, overpopulation. Put out the damn fire, get the kids out of the house, and then we can go have some beers and talk about it, right? Anyway, we're having an actual conversation about saving life on Earth. The social network of actual conversations, Snack Bar. It's fun, it's playful, kind of like Block Party, right? I'm feeling it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, Jamin. I really appreciate having this kind of space. It is very different than the land of Aryaman on Facebook.
I just got a comment from Sandy that my hair is definitely suspicious. All righty. Now we're talking about what we need to be talking about.
All right. I need to get going too, everyone. So thanks again, Jamin, for your opportunity.
Heck yeah. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a fun topic to dive into.
You are spicing up the block party. So keep coming back and keep bringing the spice.
You bet.
Look at everybody.
Yeah.
Look at everyone.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, everyone.
All right, Michael. Have a great weekend. See you soon.
Have a good one.
All righty. So how are people feeling, and what are people feeling like talking about? Got a lot of places we could go from here. Adam, good to see you. What's on your mind?
You know, one of the things that I think needs to change and like is money, the way it's transaction, the way I feel like we put value on almost everything, and it's wrong and it's bad. It's not money itself. It's just how we value, are, how we value people's lives. That's what's wrong. And I just feel like I don't know like the right answer. I'm not trying to say let's have a communist country or something, but I'm just saying something has to change, and I'm not exactly sure what. It's just I feel like money is universal. I mean, it's just we think that it's just affecting us out here, but it's affecting the whole world. It's affecting us. It's affecting other countries, and it's all related. It's all connected.
Totally.
Just what was on my mind.
Yeah, totally. No, and we've had some pretty deep conversations about money here, and in fact, some of the folks who have joined, namely Adam Soul, has taken the position that we should have a world without money, no money at all. And then others are looking at it in different ways. You know, how do we measure value and energy flows and all this, and how do we value the ecosystem services? But for me, all that fundamentally misses the point. The money, we definitely need to have the money conversation, but let's first have the conversation of who are we and why are we here? Are we here to accumulate? Oh, but don't touch the bumblebees. Oh, but keep accumulating, right? Hey, sweetheart, careful. Wait. Okay. Melissa just got back.
I mean, that's a very deep question. I mean, there's a lot of thought into it, but I think the reason that we are here, the point is to see how we live together, not as just a family, but as a planet. Coexistence. I think we have to stop thinking about just ourselves, just our peers, just our. We are coexisting on one planet, and we have to get rid of, I think, a lot of the borders and yeah. So I think that's what it's about, is being the best version of yourself. I believe in the pop. You know what pop is? Pursuit of perfection. Pop. Like you'll never get there, but the point is to improve upon yourself.
Right, but you see, perfection and better and improvement presupposes a measuring stick, right? Better at what, right? Better at hunting and killing animals? I don't think that's what, I'm just hypothetically.
Well, I think it's a matter of better as a whole. Uh, if I'm better off, but because I'm better off, you're out in the slum and you're homeless, it doesn't make it better. Like it has to be that all of us are better off rather than just one person. So that's how I value the better.
Sure. Alrighty.
Jamin, is there any way, I sent a link right now, is there any way you could open it and maybe share the audio? That it basically talks about when in the Aquarius age, when humanity is going to start asking, who are we and what are we here for? Someone sent it to me a few months ago, someone that I love so much. I don't know if you mind.
No, let's take a look at it. Emery had his hand up prior to that, so let's hear from Emery, and then let's take a look at the video or the audio or whatever it is. Go ahead, Emery.
Yeah, I just had to come back for Adam about the borders, and I just wanted to input my belief in borders is that you know, we do need to have some borders. You know, it's like we need to have some rules. You know, it's like you know, you have your own home, right? I mean, you're gonna put a border to some degree, right? You're just not going to let everybody walk in to your home, right? And more or less, as a unified, as a country, as a society that we have established, you know, more or less, right? We have to kind of look at that as our home, and you know, not necessarily let everybody in. It's so nonchalant. Come right in. You know, I'm not for that, really. You know, I have to draw the line.
Well, thank you, Emery. Speaking of drawing lines, look, we're looking at issues one at a time in isolation. And when we look at this issue of borders, there's a whole bunch of assumptions that we're not addressing. We're just looking at this one thing, to have a border or not to have a border. And you could argue that from any different angle. Once again, I'm going to share the screen just for half a minute. What if we mastered all of this, all of these topics that I'm putting up on the screen, right? Okay, what about the whole of our politics, economics, and entire set of living arrangements? What about it is working? What about it is not working, right? What about agriculture? What about the way we grow food? Do we just eat plants, or do we kill a bunch of animals? Do we raise? I mean, we have to look at it holistically. We have to look at the whole of it, right? Now, the dichotomy is to look at the whole of it, we have to break it down into its parts and look at each part separately. But then we have to come back to the whole. So for me, it's like a dialectic between looking at individual topics and then looking at the whole of all topics, right? So anyway, Myra, let's take a look at what you got here. I'm not sure how long it is, but let's just watch a few minutes anyway, and then we can pause it and take the pulse and see if this is looking interesting to folks. Does that sound fair to everybody?
Sure.
Alrighty.
Let me mute my mic.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, in general, we mute mics when we're not talking. All right, and it's the Aquarian Shift, a conversation with Dr. Siegfried Baumbach. And is it a video or just audio? Okay, click here to listen to Dr.
It's an audio.
Audio. Okay, well, let me screen share so at least I think Sandy will appreciate this gentleman's beard. So let's go ahead and share that. All right, your computer audio. All right. Click here to listen. Here we go.
Well, hello. I am Siegfried Baumbach. I live in Mexico, and we just made a friendship with Karuna, and she asked me to share a little bit about what is coming up this March 21st in relationship to the big changes that we are living in our society and what is happening in terms of the Aquarian age. Because, yes, there are always different angles and different ideas on when the Aquarian age really started. And, well, the most official thing for me was the 21st of March in 1948. Because that's an astronomical date more than astrological. And so from that, time is running, and right now in this year 2020, in March, we have covered the first 72 years of the Aquarian Age, which means the first degree of the 30 degrees of Aquarius. And that is a very important date, together with what is happening this year in terms of the conjunction with Pluton and Saturn and Jupiter, and then in March, also Mars, which speeds up all these changes of the paradigms that we are living already. Because what are these changes of the paradigms in the transition of one age of Pisces to the Aquarian age? Well, basically, the old structures, the old power structures, the dominion, the religious beliefs that have become in so many aspects so fanatic, the aspects in our economic systems of dominion and of abuse and of having gone into really just a society of consumer practices, which of course everyone knows how badly this affects our environment. You know, one thing is to have good things, but the superfluous stuff is like this time still of the, well, the sheep following just a call of the part of the announcements of the publicity and so forth. But Aquarius represents now a total different consciousness. You know, it's not anymore just the following. It is a matter of becoming aware, of awakening to what's happening, of first of all, to be able to awaken to this. What is important is to ask the question about what is the meaning of life, what is the sense of life, and then we will have answers, and then we will be able to understand what is all the story on the Aquarian age and how the word of knowing, of wisdom, which is the key word for Aquarius, is now the important aspect, so that everyone has access to this. And of course, there are very particular different ways of our society living together, and what was on a pyramidal structure and dominion, now it becomes a reticular structure, the networks of consciousness. And together with this, you know, everything that has to do with solidarity, with brotherhood, with serving, with contributing, is somehow to this new paradigm, to this new meaning, this new possibility of really being part of everything. And so right now, in this first degree that is covered in Aquarius, it will be so much more evident that we have entered a new age, even though we are still in a total transition. And of course, especially because of that, the old paradigm and the old structures want to hold on because of fear. They will not have the power, the dominion anymore. And that happens in many aspects of life. And one of them is in the established religions.
Okay, I'm just going to pause it right there. I actually love everything this gentleman is saying. I wish he was here right now. And after 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, as I would have said back in the 1980s, where's the beef, right? Now I say, where's the Beyond Meat, right? Or where's the field? And what, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, did someone say something? Okay. So again, I totally agree. You know, yep, we don't want to be consumer. Yep, we don't want to be dominated. Yep, we don't want to dominate. But let's have the conversation. What do we want? What do we want? What kind of a world do we want? For example, I'll just say what I believe. I believe we should have a world that is vegan and in which every human being is guaranteed nutritious vegan foods. That's just like a starting point. And then on top of that, layer on shelter. Everyone should have shelter, right? Even if it means, you know, millions, a billion people need to sleep in bunk beds, fine. Bunk beds are better than a street, right? Where you're out begging or, you know, doing prostitution or selling drugs or whatever. So let's take care of basic human needs. And for me, that's just like table stakes. We're not going to get out of the madness as long as we have brothers and sisters who are starving to death and brother and sister species going extinct, right? So we first have to stop the madness, right? It's kind of like, if we don't stop the madness, it's kind of like a psychiatrist going up to the two bloodiest gangs in Rio de Janeiro who are in the middle of a gunfight. And the psychiatrist goes up and says, hey guys, don't stop fighting, keep killing each other, but can I talk with you about your psychology and your feelings? I mean, just gotta screw you. You know, we've got to stop the fighting before we can have a conversation. We got to stop the killing, stop the starving, right? Stop the madness. So that is so basic, but then but we have to go deeper than stopping the fighting. Why are these people fighting in the first place? Oh, because they're hoarding. And this gang wants what that other gang has, right? Okay. So if the root of it is hoarding, you know, here, let me again put up the map that that I love to keep showing. Hopefully I'm not driving people crazy with that. All right. Root causes I've got here on the bottom. Totalitarian agriculture and separation, right? I mean, this very notion that I can own land and that I have the right to chop down every tree and kill every organism on that land, spray a bunch of DDT, Agent Orange, Roundup, whatever the heck chemicals, and then plow it and plant whatever cash crop I want to plant because that's what makes the most money. I mean, come on. Look, that's exactly what got us here, to overpopulation and to screwed up politics, economics, and living arrangements, where, you know, I learned that, hey, Jamin, you know, I was kind of like depressed when I was around 20 years old and I'd taken some time off college and I was just like trying to sort stuff out. And the mother of a dear friend of mine, a woman originally from Chile, sat me down and said, look, Jamin, here's how this works, okay? If you're gonna go around just being depressed and questioning everything and all that, nobody's gonna wanna be with you. But if you get into the game and be successful, then people will wanna be with you. And you'll attract a mate and you can have a family and a nice big house and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, she happened to be the one to let me in on the little secret, right? But conversations like that happen all the time. The game is hoarding. You want to be attractive? You want to have friends? You want to have an attractive mate? You want to have, you got to hoard, buddy, right? So we're playing a game called hoarding. And basically the new PC meme out there, no one ever says it in these terms, but here's what it boils down to. Hoard responsibly. Remember, like when we got to college and the meme was drink responsibly? Make no mistake, there were really two messages in there. The first message was very clear: drink. I don't care if you're 18 years old and you never had a drink, you're here to drink, buddy. Drink. And then the second message is, oh, do it responsibly. The message today, even though it's never put in these terms, hoard, oh, responsibly, right? Oh, I'm a conscientious investor, right? I want to make massive returns. Oh, but investing in the right things, right? It's totally screwed up. If we're going to play a game of hoarding, we get to this point of omnicide. Fast or slow, but here's where we're going to get, right? So, again, if not the game of hoarding, what game do we want to play? What game shall we play? Why are we here? That gets back to why we're here. By the way, I totally agree with Adam. I mean, I think I articulated it pretty well. Everyone needs to be well. Okay, fine. We all need to be well. But let's assume everyone's well. Then what? Do we just sit around and play video games and smoke vegan cigarettes? Or, you know, what's the mission, right? Okay, fine. Everyone's well. Now what? Let's answer that question now rather than then, partly because I think in order to get there, we're going to need to have an answer to that question. I really think if either we solve it holistically or we ain't solving nothing. That's my personal take. I could be wrong. Nolan?
Well, I think that question is especially interesting to ask now with the rise of automation and that taking over in the coming years, because you know, part of the way someone might argue against automating processes, ultimately making whatever it is easier to get done and automatic, is, well, people find their meaning from their work. They do. And so, okay, well then is the point of automation is it oversimplistic to say that automation is supposed to be eliminating work? Is it more appropriate to say it's allowing us to do some kind of higher work? And if it's higher work, then like towards what? Because when you don't have the basic resources you need to survive, then it's obvious what you're working towards. But as you have those, the question of what do I want? What am I going for? What is my purpose? It gets more intense and mysterious. And I think automation is going to really, well, is already ramping that up very intensively.
I mean, if I'm not interrupting, Nolan.
Go for it.
Let's look at the two bookends, right? You could have automation in, and I know most people don't like this word, but I'll use it anyway. Automation in a utopian society, where it basically relieves us from heavy grunge work, and we can all walk around in, you know, white hemp cotton robes and eat vegan foods. And, you know, it's kind of like Logan's Run, except people don't get executed at age 33, right? They just keep on living and eating and, you know, having fun and whatever. The other bookend is the Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos bookend, where the rich keep getting richer. They're able to invest in automation. They own the factories. They own the drones. They own. And the rest of us are totally out of work. And the rest of the world just becomes one giant starving Calcutta, while Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos sell their goods to the remaining sociopaths who can afford them until they bled them dry, right? I mean, the ultimate consequence of that bookend is one uber wealthy person who owns everything and everyone else is dead. That's pretty inspiring, right? So anyway, look at the two bookends. I'm much more towards the Logan's Run, sans execution. Anyway, Logan's Run. I know Emery knows what I'm talking about, but I think the rest of you are a little young for that. Oh yeah, James, who's my age, knows what I'm talking about. So, I mean, that's the good use of automation. In fact, you know, nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with being efficient and all that. But let's take away the hoarding versus starving, right? Because if one person's hoarding, look, what's the statistic that, you know, 1% of the people own 50% of the wealth. Okay, imagine you go to a wedding and there's this big cake and there's enough for everybody. There's 100 people there, and if everyone had 1/100th of the cake, everyone would be great. Okay, great. And it's a vegan cake. Okay, one person out of that 100 comes along, and boom, they take half the cake, and they go sit down and they're gorging themselves on half the cake, right? And then, you know, the other 19% come along and clean up, you know, the remaining, you know, 45% of the cake. And you're left with 80 people splitting, what, 3-4% of the cake? They each get crumbs. It's absolutely absurd. And yet that's the world we're living in right now. Now, because of totalitarian agriculture, and because it's okay to go decimating rainforests in Brazil, Indonesia, everywhere, okay? There's a superabundance of food. Supply and demand, food is cheap. And so people are still eating, all except for the poorest, you know, 500 million, they're starving. But wait till, you know, planetary overheating runs its course for literally even a few more months. Guy McPherson is predicting food shortages the end of this year, okay, in terms of harvests and all that because of the heat. So anyway, all this is to say, I've thought about this all my life, ever since I was, I don't know, 10 or something, probably even before. But certainly when I went to Spain and I saw my Spanish relatives who were prosperous, who I lived with for a year, 82, 83, I lived in Spain with my Spanish relatives for a year. I saw them just walking by, you know, hungry, dirty, homeless gypsies, and basically talking about them and treating them as if they're not even human, right? That was the ugly, dirty reality of Spain in the early 80s with 20% unemployment, right? I've got mine, screw you. Oh, let's go to church on Sunday and do the sign of the cross and pretend that we're, you know, bullshit. Right? So I've been thinking about this a long time. That's not to say that I have the answers, but I am certainly ready for the conversation. And anyway, you all know where I stand. Love to hear from everyone on this. What a great conversation. Who are we? Why are we here? Are we really these bloodthirsty bullies who want to take everything from the masses and let them starve to death? Of course not. But when it was put to me like my friend's mom put it to me back in the 80s, late 80s, hey, Jamin, if you don't get in the game, no girlfriend for you, no pretty wife for you, no nice house for you, and you're going to be all alone, you're going to be poor, you're going to be sad. Well, it's like, oh, I don't want that. You know, I was a young kid. I don't know, 20 years old. What did I do? I hit the books. Determined not to be the poor schmuck, you know. But what does that do? It breeds sociopaths. It breeds hoarders without borders. And we get the world that we've got, where we've got like months to live if we don't turn this around incredibly radically and incredibly quickly. Hence the imperative of the social network of actual conversations. Let's have actual conversations about things that actually matter, right? And let's make it fun and interesting. And if we have to start it off as the Duck Dynasty of global transformation, bring it. Whatever we have to do. But the world needs to be in this conversation. It's not enough for a dozen of us to be on this conversation on a Friday afternoon, feeling nice and intellectual and sensitive and all those good things. We got a planet to turn around. Yes, Adam.
Okay, gotta unmute it. I have another take on automation. I think automation is where it's at because slavery is illegal. That is the whole point. That's why we still use animals to do our dirty work, to do our. That's what automation is about. Now, when you realize that, I mean, humanity has a huge ego, and we have to work on that. That's why the importance of, you know, my stuff, my things is so important to us. It shouldn't be, but it's our ego. Oh, I have to have things this way. This is the way I live my life. It's not necessary to have the 80-inch TV screen, but guess what? My neighbors have it. It's all that jealousy, all that ego that is I think what we need to like work on. That's why we think it's so important to have borders. That's why I think it's so important that we have things. But we have to realize those things are just an extension of what we think will make us happy. All we really want is to be happy. We don't want to be rich. We don't really want the iPad and all these cool things. What we really want is to find out what makes us happy. And if you understand that, I remember reading this, genie story. It was a short story, and it was all about how these three guys had like these wishes that they wanted, all of them different. But the moral of the story was that what they were really wanted to wish for is to be happy. The one that wanted to get married, the one that wanted to get rich, the one that wanted to have powers, it's all about trying to figure out what makes us happy. And that's all I have to say.
I totally agree. When my buddy's mother sat me down to tell me this is how the rules of the game work, I didn't want land, houses, stuff, money. I wanted to be happy. And she told me, Jamin, you want to be happy? In this world, here's how it works. Go get a bunch of stuff, and then you'll be happy. Emery.
Yeah. Adam, I send you 200 grand. You're going to be happy.
I'll be more happy if I find a good relationship with a woman that I like, or I'll be more happy with, I mean, sure, for the moment, of course it's gonna be great to, you know, buy things that I need or buy a new home, but you have to understand it's not gonna last, and it's not gonna. You're always gonna be able to find something to buy. I can find a billionaire and show him this awesome new plane, and he's going to look at it the way we look at an iPhone that just came out. But the point is it's only momentary, and it doesn't define us. It doesn't make us better people. It's just something that's momentary. We are trying to figure out what makes us happy, and these things are just momentary.
So do you take the 100 grand, the 200 grand, or not?
If you give it to me as a gift, and that's what you really want, then sure. But if that's all it took, everyone would be robbing the bank. If that's all it took to be happy.
No, but the bottom line is that I'm looking at is that you receive 200 grand, you're going to be content. You're going to be happy to receive that. And I'm not saying that I have 200 grand to send you. By the way, I'm poor.
I'm not asking for 200 grand. Or look, I mean, I feel happy just knowing that, you know, my bills are paid, and I can do things that a lot of people can't do. You know, like I see homeless people all around of where I used to work, and like that makes me really appreciate what I have. So it doesn't matter that, you know, of course, who couldn't use $200,000? Who couldn't use $1 million? But it doesn't define us. It doesn't.
But you could take your
only
200 grand.
momentary.
You could
Huh?
take your 200 grand and help out thousands and thousands of homeless people if that's your wish, you know. If you want to do something constructive like that, you know, all the power to you, you know. And I wish I would have ways to be able to do stuff like that also, you know. But for me personally, you know, in the past I've brought do that on a consistent level, on a consistent basis. Can't do that every day, you know, when you're trying to make ends meet and just keep things rolling, you know. And but if you had the big bucks, you know, there wouldn't be anything personally me to stop from helping out people, you know, or you know, anything.
But I could just give up my time and help the needy. I don't necessarily just have to. I'll tell you what.
Well,
just think about it this way, okay? What does a child want when from his parents? Does he want them to just buy him gifts and you know, say his life is great, or does he want a real relationship with his parents? Does he really want? But look at all these celebrities that have millions of dollars, and a lot of them committing suicides and going into drugs. I mean, it does not define happiness. It gives you, obviously, there's benefits to having money, but not knowing, like, I don't know. I'm just trying to say that there are so many ways to truly be happy, and for me, money's not it. Money's not like the main thing that would make me happy.
Yeah, you know, Adam, I always kind of sort of felt that it's not the money that's the problem. That totally, you know, it's how that money is being used and where it's being spent to what end goal. You know, that's where it's at. You know, I mean, you're gonna have kooky ideas, and if you're insane, and if you want to do harm, you're not gonna do too well with the money you got. You know, you're gonna put it into wars or weapons, or, you know,
and
it's crazy stuff that's not good for the planet. It's not good for the future of existence here. You know, so what you do with the money in the system that we have. You know, I mean, of course, if you want to get totally elaborate and constructive and build a new system, well, that's another road, that's another job, that's another big plan. You know, we got time. We don't have time for that. Really, we're at the precipice here. So we got to use the tools at hand to accomplish a big job.
No, obviously, but that's the problem. The reason so many people have issues, even when the more money they have, is because of their ego. And I think that is the problem. Because, you know, it's kind of like you go to a buffet and you take way more food than maybe you meant to actually eat or need to eat. Or you go to a restaurant where it's portioned and you feel like, okay, this is good. I'm satisfied.
All right,
So,
we've got a poem from Natalie that's about this very topic. Natalie, would you be good enough to screen share again? And then the way you did it the first time was perfect. Just do that again. I just wanted to get everyone's attention on that. There we go. Okay. All right. The poem is called Look After Your Shell. Shells of me, shells of me, shells of gray and shells of steel, tin cans whistle by on metal rims. The jingle of changes they count to get in. Smoke fumes and weary woes stagger from their resting post. Spare change or a hope. Glazed are the reflections that echo through these city walls. These bustling streets contains its pity. Shells of me I see, shells of all, the shadows left, consumed by grief. The shell of a home once filled with heat, shells now cold on unforgiving streets. Lights flicker and future fade. Wet wind won't wash the shame from their face. Industrialized mayhem and no work for a trade. I pity the shells that come with morning tide. For the shell of sand, grit and concrete, this is the shell you must eat. This is the shell you're forsaken to see. Beautiful, Natalie. Beautiful. I mean, that just for me tells the story of how we've taken a beautiful natural world and turned it into some human being's nightmare, right? Natalie says, that's everyone. Yes, thank you, Natalie. Emery's asking if anyone's in the waiting room. Nope, I'm keeping a close eye to the waiting room. But I mean, you know, here let me give a parallel kind of example for me, what that made me think of it. So I used to work, I worked for Microsoft for a number of years, and I was corporate strategy manager, which meant that I worked on the same floor as Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and the other, you know, C-level executives. And I've had a small number of meetings with Bill Gates in my life, but enough to get, you know, a feel. He and I basically grew up in the same neighborhood in Seattle. So I kind of know where he, you know, where he comes from, because it's largely where I came from. I grew up both in Seattle and San Francisco Bay Area. And the man has no peace. He has no peace. And he works all the time. He barely rests because he has no peace. And he's addicted to more. I mean, he's become like, basically Gollum with, a big horde. And one day I told him about an idea that I'd been dreaming up to optimize agriculture and end world hunger. And I said, look, we could get together with Warren Buffett, who owns Burlington Northern, or is the biggest owner of Burlington Northern. And, with his talents and assets and what we've got, we could totally do this. Bill Gates was simply not interested, because there's no money in ending hunger. And in fact, if you get into the game of ending hunger and you say, oh my goodness, this is actually going to require some money, well, who's got the biggest checkbook? Well, all eyes would land on Bill Gates, and it'd be, how about it, Bill? Are these lives worth saving? He won't even go there in the conversation. It's all about more for him, even though kids are starving and getting brain damage from malnutrition. That's the heart of darkness. And that's what leaves, so all of us who get into that game, we become shells of what we once were, to quote a beautiful poet. And Sandy writes, I deal with homeless on a daily basis. When I find them housing, they say they will move into hard housing, but almost every time they opt out at the last second, 99% of the time. Mostly they want 100% autonomy, no rules, no regulations, no scrutiny of their personal choices. They would rather poop in a bucket and sleep in their urine than surrender their autonomy. Occasionally, they are unable to conform to reasonable standards because of mental health issues, but most are simply living in opposition to social conformity. That's very interesting. So that's homeless in a rich country, right? And I would go so far as to say that in a rich country, you can afford to be homeless, right? But kids malnourished and dying on the streets of Calcutta, I don't think many of them would choose that life. In fact, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a single one who would choose that life, who's not like addicted to drugs or something like that and totally screwed up. I mean, look, the bottom line is very, very simple. As long as we live in a world where people are dying of hunger, we're going to be dead inside, knowing that we can do something about it, right? And I think that the United States is just a prime example of a country. We're just like zombified, and we can't even think straight anymore because we can't feel straight anymore because we've gotten so used to that there are millions of people dying of starvation, and we have the ability to stop it, and yet we choose not to stop it. Just like there's billions of animals being slaughtered every year, and we choose not to stop that either. In fact, pass the beef, will you? Hey, Adam, pass the beef. So, I mean, we are so far gone, right? I kind of feel like humanity is at this point is one giant AA meeting, and we're basically, our choice is, do we keep on drinking or do we finally push the bottle aside? So far, we keep drinking, except time is running out. We just got word that our liver is going to give out and we're going to die in a few weeks if we don't stop drinking the straight vodka. Well, we're still drinking. Well, now we're on house arrest. And, we're chained to the hospital bed, and we're going to be unchained in a few weeks to either go out and keep drinking or stop drinking, but for the moment we're chained to our hospital beds. And we're on instead of going down to the AA meeting downtown, we're doing it on video conference. But if nothing changes, nothing changes. Emery's got his hand up and got some good stuff in the chat. Let me first read what Natalie wrote in the chat, since we read her beautiful poem. Natalie, I don't work with them, but I also think there is the issue of not believing it true that they get used to a nice bed in warm water and then from under their feet, it can be taken. Yes, addiction is a massive part of it, but I think there are other reasons. And Sandy agrees. Natalie goes on to say, I wish there was old day rationing books. Ha, they can only have meat 2 days a week, if any. Old day rationing. Yeah. I mean, well, that speaks for itself. And then we've got Emery. Go for it, Emery.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it takes a tremendous commitment, you know, when one decides, or people gather together and decide they're going to do something, like feed the starving children of the world, or even on smaller scales, you know, if you commit to helping out that way, it has to be a commitment there. You can't just do it one weekend or 1 week, or a short-lived effort, right? And then take it away and then drop it, and then just think that, well, everything's going to go back to normal for that person is going to live a happy life. No, I mean, it's a long-term commitment to provide the necessities of life to people who are in desperate situations. And until we get to that point of total commitment to do that, you know, we're gonna have to map it out really precisely.
Hence collective superintelligence. We've got to map it all out. We've got to, you know, treat the, you know, the middle class and upper class in, you know, every single country that's represented here, from Ireland to Canada. We're going to have to map it out for all of us. We're going to have to map it out for the poor. We're going to have to map it out for all the peoples of the world. When I say we, I mean all the peoples of the world. All the peoples of the world are going to have to get together, which is what we're, you know, working on here. How are we doing? Oh, we're not even double digits at the moment. All right. And we need to get 8 billion people together. But we will get there. And the sooner we figure out the formula to doing that, the sooner we'll get there. That's how I see it. And again, who's the we? Not just the 9 of us, everyone who wants to play. We're inviting the world to play. And we're figuring out more creative and enticing ways to invite the world to play in what has become the only game left in town. Saving life on Earth is the only game in town, because there ain't going to be no town in like a year or so if we don't stop exponential planetary overheating, which just got kicked into high gear with a massive reduction in global dimming. And Natalie writes, I feel like we are ants. We are small, but we grow and can take on big objects and tasks. I totally agree, Natalie. In fact, I've often expressed that I would love to see humanity become like a giant ant colony where we're all working together. I'm sure all of us have sat and looked at strings of ants running along and doing their thing. There's no individuality there, right? There's a collective. you know, like the Brazilian national team. Sure, individuals make pretty cool moves, but it's all about the whole. It's about the team. It's about the collective, right? And my goodness, I mean, you want happiness? Live in a world where no one's starving to death. That's happiness. Live in a world where everyone has each other's backs. That's happiness. And we can get there. But we got to put some elbow grease into it.
Some heart grease. Keep that heart pumping.
I just want to say that I need to go. I have my own vegan party that I'm hosting, so it's nice to talk to you guys, and I'll probably come back a little later. But it's been really cool.
And dude, Adam, just like last week, bring the vegan block party over here whenever you feel like it.
All right.
We'll be
I'll
here.
let 'em know.
We'll be here until 6 a.m. Saturday morning, and better together.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, great to see you, Adam.
Talk to you later. Yep. Bye.
Thanks.
Have a good party.
How's everybody doing?
I'm all right. Got some party favors.
I could use some party favors myself around now. 11 hours in to a 24-hour block party.
I guess it can be drooling, eh? Grueling or drooling. What's the terminology? Grueling?
Grueling. Yeah.
But that need not be, right?
No, look.
Take out that map. Take out that map. Go over the map again. Make new maps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of mapping to do, right? I mean, I think that could be a job that we can parse out, perhaps, you know, at some point somehow. And, you know, we get Brett's system there with the, you know, with the hole-ons, and we put a map in each hole-on, right?
Well, you know, one thing we could do is we could record, you know, a few minutes of video on each of the 25 topics in the map, right? And then beyond that one slide with 25 topics, I've got some other slides with a few more. But here's what I'm suggesting. Between now and the next block party, we can get all of this up onto Snack Bar, right? The social network of actual conversations, the map, and what I'll just call the starter conversations, right? Let's say we have a, you know, I don't know, 5-minute conversation on each topic. Why not, right? Introduce the topic, but not just introduce the topic in isolation, which is what we too often do as humans, but introduce the topic in relation to the whole, right? So I'm totally game to do that. I mean, if we feel like we've got the right strategy with Snack Bar, the social network of actual conversations, and with this new sort of, you know, marketing twist of marketing, of building out something that's easy for people to navigate and consume and just watch and share and say, oh my goodness, this is the Duck Dynasty of global transformation. Why the heck not? Entertainment sells a lot more than hard conversations. Emery's got his hand up. Go for it, Emery.
Yeah, just wanted to tell you that I was doing some stuff there with Brett before, with seeing how that wakelet thing was working out, and so that'd be a good place to put Snack Bar. I don't know if it could be set up. He's found a way to get that lit, like the participation part of that going, so that a new person could come along and wish to participate and get up to speed as to what we're doing at Snack Bar, and navigate through the information, through the content that's provided there. At some point, it'll be massive, and start sharing their efforts, and more people will be inspired, right? And they could send out the links to that, and people will be exposed. It's all about exposure, to have that out there so people understand that this is happening, it exists, and may want to be a part of it, right? And it's easy to be a part of it. It's not complicated. Going to make it real easy for people to get involved, right? There's no need to make it complex. It's going to be ABC.
I'm with you, Emery. I'm with you. So just to be clear what I'm proposing, let me do a little screen share here. Actually, I think this would be a good time to start a new recording. So let me go ahead and do that. Just 1 second.